Hi folks, as it's coming up towards Easter, I'd like to share with you a reading from my book, Stories in the Scriptures. This is a novelist's take on these ancient narratives. And my approach is always to ask not what should we believe, but what situations prompted ordinary people, just like ourselves, to tell these stories. And that leads me to a fascinating view on these stories. So here for the Easter season, a story which in one way will be very familiar to all of you, but in another way it will be rather different. Here we go then. When Yeshua was 30 years old, long after Gabriel had returned to a far country, he chose from among his friends certain men who were devout. He chose Simon and Jacob and Johanan, and they set out on a journey throughout Galilee, teaching and breaking bread. Word about them spread all around the villages, and people would come out to greet them and welcome them into their homes. Some people said that when Rabbi Yeshua touched them, they were healed of sickness. But when people asked him to give them a sign, he would not. One day Simon said to him, "Rabbi, why do you not tell the people who you are? That you are Messiah the Prince?" But Yeshua answered, "The time is not yet. You must speak no more of it. And whenever anyone would say, 'You're the Messiah,' or 'Are you the one who is to come?' he would answer, 'You must speak no more of it.'" Word spread among them that the secret was for them alone, though he had never said, "I am Messiah the Prince." Others had said it about him. So they believed that he would reveal himself when the hour came. They asked him, "What will be the sign that all is ready?" And all he would say was, "It'll come in a time of troubles. You'll face your trials and hardships, but stand firm and don't heed those who say, 'Now is the time,' or 'It is near.' First, the times allotted for the Gentiles must expire. And then Jerusalem will be surrounded by armies, and it will be thrown to the ground, but they'll not prevail. For we shall see the one like a son of man coming upon the clouds. That will be the sign." One day, when Yeshua had been working at his trade with his brothers, he said to his friends, "Let us journey to Jerusalem, for it's Passover time." So they set out, and many of the people journeyed with them, bringing donkeys laden with provisions and goods for exchange. It was whispered among the crowd that he would now declare himself Messiah the Prince. But Yeshua would only say, "The time's not yet. Speak nothing of it." When they approached Jerusalem, and they saw all the people journeying there, some of their number ran ahead so that they might try to find lodgings, for the city wouldn't hold as many visitors as the crowds upon the roads. And Yeshua looked up and saw the hill that he must climb, and he was weary, and his feet were sore. So he rode on one of the donkeys. Then some people began to shout, "Hail, Messiah the Prince!" More and more people joined in, and it became a commotion. They continued their chanting until Messiah had reached the city. Going through the gates, he slipped away from the crowd as his friends took him to their lodgings. When word of the commotion reached Pilate the governor, he made enquiries, and on learning that the crowds had hailed Rabbi Yeshua as Messiah the Prince and would make him their king, he issued a warrant for his arrest. But the soldiers arrested Yeshua Barabbas. Rabbi Yeshua said, "He's not the man they were seeking. I must go to him and see that he's released." But Simon said, "No, Rabbi, this man may be a scoundrel. Maybe that he deserves to die. We should withdraw from the city, return to Galilee." And they all agreed with Simon. But Yeshua had made up his mind. He chose Judah and told him to go to the priest and say to him that Yeshua was ready to hand himself over in exchange for Barabbas. If the priest will speak for Barabbas and say he is not a Messiah, then maybe the governor will listen. "And will he speak for you also, Rabbi? For none of their party will believe in a coming Messiah." Yeshua made no reply. He said only, "Go and do it." So Judah left them. Then Yeshua spoke. "When we arrived at the city, and I rode upon the donkey, you thought I had given you a sign. It was the sign of the weary feet. Now I'll give you another sign." And he went to the young man at the door and dismissed him. And kneeling at the young man's bowl, he made his friends approach, and one by one he washed their feet. Then he took his friends, and they went to Gethsemane, and there they spent the time in prayer as they waited for Judah. He came at last, with some men from the household of the chief priests and some soldiers. They went first to the home of the priest, and he asked, "Are you a disciple of Barabbas?" And Yeshua said, "I am not." And the priest asked, "Is Barabbas Messiah?" And Yeshua said, "He's not." "Are you then Messiah?" he asked. And Yeshua replied, "When Messiah the Prince is revealed, you will see also the one like a Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven to meet him." The priest tore his garment because he did not want to hand over anyone to the governor. But he knew that Barabbas must be released. So he said, "Let it be so." And the soldiers took Yeshua, and they went to the home of the governor. And the priest and his associates and Simon followed them. Now Pilate the governor was a cruel man, and he would crucify 2 men for 1 man's offence. But Yeshua said, "He is not the man whom you were seeking. I am he." He ordered Barabbas to be brought to him. He said, "What am I to do with him?" And Yeshua replied, "Release him. He's not the man you were seeking." The priest and his associates also called for him to be released. and the crowd were calling too. But Pilate feared that if he set him free, the people would seek to make him their king. He turned to Yeshua and he said, "And you, what am I to do with you?" Yeshua remained silent. So Pilate asked him, "Are you a king?" "I have never said so. Others may say that I am, but I say that my kingdom is not in this place." Pilate made Rabbi Yeshua and Yeshua Barabbas face the people, and he said to them, "Who is your king?" They remained silent, and he asked again, "Who is your king?" And this time they answered, "Caesar is our king." Pilate pushed Barabbas down the steps, and he fell at the feet of one of the guard. "Take him and flog him and set him free." Then he said to the people, "I'll make this one your king." And he called for some thorns to be made into a wreath, and he pulled it onto Yeshua's head so that the blood poured down his face. "Here is your king," he said, and he ordered the guard to take him away and crucify him. They scourged him and made him carry his heavy beam to Golgotha. There they laid him upon the beam, and they drove nails through his wrists. And when they had hauled him up, they drove a nail into his feet also. And Pilate had placed upon the cross a notice which said, "Yeshua, King of Judea." There he hung, along with others, whether guilty or innocent as he was, until the day was nearing its end. Because the next day was a Sabbath, Pilate agreed that the bodies should be removed and taken to the pit. Those who had not yet expired, they hastened to their end, but Yeshua appeared to have died already. Now there was in the crowd Joseph, a man of Judea, who was an admirer of Yeshua, though he was not known to the Galileans. And he asked Pilate for the body of Yeshua, for it was not fitting that a rabbi should be thrown into the pit with criminals. "Take him," Pilate said. "Do with him what you want." So Joseph laid him upon his donkey and took him to bury him in a cave, a sepulchre in a garden, which was prepared and ready to receive him. When they had gone a short distance from the city, Yeshua uttered a loud groan. "Do not be alarmed," said Joseph. "It's the movement of the animal causing the body to make the sound." But again they heard him, and one of the companions called out, "Water! He's asking for water! He's living!" Joseph took him from the donkey and laid him at the roadside. There he moistened his lips and his mouth with a little water. Then, lifting him up, Joseph carried him in his arms to his home. Joseph dressed his wounds, and he placed him upon a bed, and there was someone to sit with him all the time, day and night, in case he should waken and want for anything. On the third day he awoke, but he had no strength. His feet could not bear his weight. nor could his hands take hold of anything. His voice returned, and he asked for a little food and wine to drink. Gradually, his strength returned, and the colour came back to his face. In the days that followed, it came to be whispered that some of the women of Yeshua's friends had visited the tomb, intending to anoint his body. And when they returned, they reported that no body had been lain there, and that the tomb was prepared in readiness to receive them, whether Yeshua or another. It was rumoured by some that Yeshua had lain him, that Joseph had lain him elsewhere, but others said that he'd been raised. 2 of the women of Joseph's company set out, and they came to Mariam and brought her to him, and she was overjoyed that he was alive, and she stayed for some days, tending his wounds and bathing his head. Then she returned to her home. And when Yeshua was well enough to travel, though he could not use his hands or walk more than a few steps, they took him, riding upon a donkey, to the coast. There he lived, and he grew in strength, and he was blessed with sons and daughters. He taught in the synagogue and in the villages, but never did he speak of his doings in Jerusalem. That's all, folks. Bye.